What you want to do, this is to sand an undercamber on an all balsa glider. This is a Condor 3/8 glider. Its original weight, and you want to weigh it originally, is going to be about 2.3 grams. Notice there's a sanding block here and a marking pen. The first thing that you want to do with the marking pen is to mark the trailing edge of the wing and then mark the leading edge of the wing. The reason you're doing this is you don't want to sand these portions. When you did the top airfoil, you marked the high point because you didn't want to sand that. You just wanted to sand the leading edge and the trailing edge. So we're going to do the same thing for the undercamber. Now an undercamber, notice when the wing you have now, it didn't talk about undercamber, so the bottom of the wing is flat. What we're now going to do is to sand it to put an undercamber on it, which means that the underside of the wing will follow basically the same shape as the top of the wing. What we're going to create here, now some portions of the leading edge won't be exactly the same, but basically it's going to be about 1/32 of an inch thick. You don't want to get it too thin because it wouldn't work, and you're going to carry that to the edge of the wing. You notice, and this one we've already sanded, we're going to talk about how to sand the other half. Notice when you sand the undercamber, it sort of follows, for the most part, the shape of the top of the wing. Now, the sanding block that you start with, this is a furring strip that you would buy at a place, a lumber yard would sell lumber. And what we have here, this is 80 grit for the roughing and 120 grit for the fine sanding. This is like 3/4 of an inch thick. This is about an inch wide sanding strip glued on to the furring strip. The edges are not supported because they provide some curvature, which is helpful for our undercamber sand. Now, what we're going to do now, move this out of the way, is I'm going to support the support the top of the wing with my fingertips. Notice I have a little finger next to it, the finger next to it. All 4 fingers are in play here. The thumb is holding it in position. Now, with the 80 grit side, which is what we're going to use for roughing, now we don't want to sand, the grain of the wood runs the width of the wing. We do not want to sand cross grain. You're going to gouge the surface of the wing. We want to sand, whoops, I just busted the nose off of the fuselage. It was broke before. We're not going to ignore that. I'm going to sand parallel to the grain, putting some pressure on it. I'm using the 80 grit side because I'm roughing. And if you'll notice, I just back and forth parallel to the grain. I don't want to get close to the trailing edge, but I don't want to sand a trailing edge. And the same thing on the leading edge. And I'm going to just back and forth. I can feel where it's at. I know where my fingers are. And this is something that you just need to, you learn by trying. And we can see the sanded material bounding up there. Back and forth, back and forth. You're not pressing too hard, just sort of a gentle, firm pressing. Now I can feel it, and when I run my thumb on one side and my finger on the other, I can feel it's coming out very nice. It's starting to create a parallel shape with a curvature on the underside of the wing. Okay, and I just blew the excess away. So we want to continue to do this. There, it's starting to feel the underside of the wing is parallel to the curvature on the top of the wing, and it feels very close to a 32nd of an inch. And one of the things you want to do is look at a 32nd of an inch on your ruler, so that you, in your mind, you have how thick that is, and you just have a tendency, and it's coming out very nicely. Okay. Now we notice this is sort of curved here because we got this undercamber going. Now what I'm going to do is I have the tip of the wing approximate. Now I'm going to come over and do the main part of the wing, so I've switched back to the 80 grit. When it comes to sanding, the hand that holds the block and the hand that does the support is going to depend on whether you're left-handed or right-handed and which ones you feel comfortable with. There isn't any set plan as to whether the left hand holds under the wing or the right hand. It's what you feel comfortable with. I happen to be left-handed, so I'm more comfortable with the sanding block in the left hand. Now, as this gets thinner, I can actually feel the sanding block moving across my fingertips. Now, some people that aren't familiar with sanding as a cutting tool would not use a sanding block. They would just hold the sandpaper with their fingertips. And what happens when you do that, it will make a nice straight surface. And for aircraft, you need to be able to be creating a nice smooth surface. Okay, we've got this roughed out pretty well. Now what we're going to do doing a little bit more with the 80 grit because I didn't get it roughed out quite good enough on the leading edge. And that's something that's just feel. You switch back and forth between the 80 grit and the 120 grit. Notice there. And again, this was the reason my fuselage nose fell off, is this was a glider I had damaged, and I glued it on just to show you about sanding Undercamber. Now that I'm done, actually both sides of the wing are done, what I'm going to do is put this back on the scale. And what happens now is the whole thing weighs about 1.5 grams, and remember it started out at like 2.2 grams. So that's about a 40% reduction in all up weight. That reduces my wing loading significantly. And again, you can see the curvature on the bottom sort of follows the curvature on the top relatively close. And that's what you're trying to do. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please contact me at Fred Mathis, that's FredMatthias at fly-m.com. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic flight.